Hello and welcome. There is a 2019 RAND Corporation report titled Overextending and Unbalancing Russia. It did not just predicted the conflict in Ukraine. It provided the step-by-step tactical blueprint 3 years before the first shot was fired. RAND isn't a government agency. You did not vote for them. Yet 95% of their funding comes directly from the Department of Defense. We think US foreign policy is debated in Congress. The truth? It is engineered in a closed loop ecosystem of 5 specific buildings in DC. Today, we are following the money to see who is actually writing the script for the world's only superpower. I have spent 2 decades in the research labs and newsrooms where these narratives are built, watching how white papers become a war. I am Dr. Adeel, and this is In Focus with Dr. Adeel. When you face a massive problem, a legal issue, a tax audit, you outsource it. You find the smartest person in the room and hand them the wheel. The United States government does the exact same thing, except the problems being outsourced isn't your mortgage dispute. They are decisions about where missiles land, about which currencies survive, about which governments get propped up, and which get quietly starved of legitimacy until they collapse. They call it think tanks. Sounds almost charming, like professors arguing over footnotes in a library. That's the point. Here is what a think tank actually is when you strip away the academic branding. It is the research and development department of the State Department, except it operates outside the State Department. No official letterheads, no freedom of information requests, no government level oversight, but it has the ear of every agency that matters. We are talking about an industry generating billions of dollars annually, built on one elegant transaction. Intellectual labor traded for policy outcomes. Scholars write papers, papers become briefings, briefings become doctrine, and doctrine becomes the reason your gas costs what it costs this morning. You did not vote for any of it. We are not looking for a conspiracy here. Conspiracies require secrecy and shame. The people running these institutions are not ashamed. They publish their work, go on television, accept awards. What we are looking at is a structural feature of how power works. Think of it like plumbing. You do not need to conspire to move water through a pipe. You just need to build the pipe correctly. The only question that matters is who designed the pipe and who did they built it for. There are 5 organizations that effectively hold the pen, not the pen that signs executive orders, but that belongs to whoever won the last election. I'm talking about the pen that writes the options presented to the person who signs them, the invisible pen. So number one is the Council on Foreign Relations. It was founded in 1921. Every Secretary of State you have heard of in the last 70 years has been a CFR member, fellow, or board member. Kissinger, Albright, Rice, Clinton, and Baker, they all were members. Foreign Affairs is not a magazine. It is the closest thing the world has to a policy scripture. Foreign ministers read it on planes. Ambassadors brief their staff on it. The CFR does not tell government what to do. It tells them what is thinkable. That is a far more profound kind of power because the governments believe they are thinking for themselves. And the number two is the Brookings Institute. The technocrats, The data people who make any policy position look like a natural conclusion drawn from objective evidence. Their donor list reads like Silicon Valley, Gates Foundation, Google, tech billionaire, money flowing into the institution that shapes technology regulation policy, but there is the detail that makes heads snap back. Brookings has historically received over 14 million from Qatar, a Gulf monarchy with significant interest in American Middle East policy, and it has Brookings scholars working out of their Doha center who provided much of the intellectual architecture for the Iran nuclear deal. When a foreign government funds the institution that trains the thinking of diplomats who negotiate the arrangements or the agreements, the line between ideas and interests become very difficult to find. Not corruption, but a structural reality nobody on the Sunday shows will walk you through. And the number three is the Heritage Foundation. Founded in 1973, from protest movement to governing philosophy, they achieved it with one document, the Mandate for Leadership, the literal operational blueprint for every Republican administration. Since Ronald Reagan, a multi-thousand page governing manual telling an incoming administration exactly which regulations to roll back, which bureaucrats to replace, which institutions to dismantle. Ronald Reagan reportedly handed a copy to every cabinet member. By the end of his first year, his administration had implemented roughly 60% of Heritage's recommendations. The document is on its 2025 edition now. This is intellectual infrastructure working perfectly. Build the blueprint while you are out of power. So when power returns, the thinking is already done. And the number four is the Atlantic Council, the NATO wing, the most important to understand right now because the Atlantic Council is live, most directly shaping the conflicts defining this decade. Founded in 1961 to build support for the transatlantic alliance, that's not a secret. That's their mission statement. But look at their donors list. Raytheon Technologies, Lockheed Martin, Boeing Defense, three of the largest defense contractors on earth, whose revenues depend structurally on military buildups, weapon sales, and active conflicts. Nobody at Raytheon is calling scholars to dictate conclusions. They do not need to. And you do not fund institutions whose conclusion you find inconvenient. The results, the companies that build the weapons help fund the intellectual case for the policies that require those weapons. All published, all on record, all technically transparent. And the number five is the RAND Corporation. RAND doesn't publish op-eds. RAND does not do cable news. RAND is trying to model your future. Born out of the US Air Force after World War II, RAND scholars invented the framework for nuclear deterrence, mutually assured destruction. The concept that kept two superpowers from annihilating each other for 40 years. They are the strategist. RAND does not advocate for policies. It tells governments how policies will play out. There are RAND reports from 2005 projecting with remarkable accuracy what a post-invasion Iraq would look like. Those reports were on the desks of people who made different decisions. Having the best analysis in the room does not mean the analysis determines the outcome. Sometimes power reads the analysis, nods, and does what it always going to do anyways. Together, these five represents a 2.5 billion annual industry of intellectual outsourcing, pre-thinking the decisions that governments will later claim as their own. and there is no equivalent on the other side of that transaction. No 2.5 billion apparatus pre-thinking your interests. It is not just the money, it's the people. You vote, your candidate loses, a new president comes in, the experts who are running things, they are out. Except, here is what actually happens. They are not. They walk across the town. Take a corner office at the CFR or Brookings or the Atlantic Council and accept a title, Distinguished Fellow. These are not retirement packages. They are holding pens where you keep something ready and warm, maintained and available. Antony Blinken, before becoming Biden's Secretary of State, he co-founded West Exec Advisors, a firm whose entire value proposition was access. We know how Washington thinks because we helped Washington think. He also held a position at the Penn Biden Center, funded by undisclosed Chinese donors, a fact that generated a federal investigation, entirely legal, partially disclosed. But the man who set American foreign policy for 4 years spent his years out of power being paid by institutions whose funding was at minimum complicated. Condoleezza Rice. Between administrations, she returned to Stanford's Hoover Institution as a senior fellow, joined corporate boards, advised, published, stayed current. When the moment came, she was ready. This is not about individuals. It is a structural observation about a system designed to ensure the same intellectual class, approximately 200 to 300 people rotating through a fixed circuit of governments, think tanks, corporate boards, and back remains in proximity to power, regardless of election outcomes. You vote and you vote for change, but you get the same old champagne in a different and new bottle. In 2014, the New York Times found that 64 foreign governments gave nearly 100 million to American think tanks to shape US policy in their favor. Gulf monarchies, European powers, Asian governments, all of them understanding that the most cost effective way to influence a 900 billion defense budget is not to lobby a congressman. It is to fund the institution that trains the thinking of the people who brief that congressman. A lobbyist buys a vote, a think tank donor buys a worldview. Worldviews are far more durable, scalable, and entirely legal. When a country joins NATO, it commits to spending at least 2% of its GDP on defense. And because NATO operates on interoperability, your systems must function alongside American and Western European systems. That procurement does not go to domestic manufacturers. It goes to Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, and Boeing. Every new NATO member is, financially speaking, a new customer. Here is the circle. The Atlantic Council publishes white paper, making the intellectual case for NATO expansion. That case, repeated across prestigious venues by credentialed voices, shapes what is thinkable in Washington. Supporting expansion becomes the default questioning, it becomes professionally risky. The government, staffed by people who trained at these institutions, adopt the policy. New members buy hardware. Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing receives contracts worth billions. A portion returns to Atlantic Council as a donation. The next white paper is commissioned. Back to step one. Self-funding, self-reinforcing, self-legitimizing. And here is the part to sit with. At the end of that white paper, at the end of the briefing and the policy adoption and the contract signing, there is a soldier, a 22-year-old from Tennessee or Ohio or Oregon, who enlists because he believes in something or because the economy in his hometown does not give him many other options. He gets deployed to a theater that was year before his deployment, the subject of a conference at the Atlantic Council where men in suits debated strategic wisdom. He does not know about that conference. The chain from the white paper to the policy, to the contract, to his forward operating position is real documented and almost entirely invisible to him. The white paper does not bleed. The fellow who wrote it goes home to Georgetown. The cycle continues. This is not a conspiracy. Conspiracies are fragile. This is a system. System do not require anyone to be villainous. They just require everyone to follow the incentives. The CFR fellow follows the incentive to maintain access. The defense contractors fund institutions whose conclusion align with their interest. The foreign governments invest in the intellectual environment shaping the policy affecting their interests. Nobody needs to be corrupt. The system produces outcomes as a natural byproduct of everyone acting in rational self-interest. That's what makes it so durable and so difficult to disrupt. Informed skepticism is not cynicism. You are allowed to read a think tank report and find it valuable and ask who funded it. You are allowed to respect a policy expert and want to know where they spent the last 4 years. These are not contradictory positions. They are what an informed citizen in a functioning democracy is supposed to do. The next time you see an independent expert on the news, check their affiliation. Are they a fellow at RAND with the Atlantic Council? Because their expertise might just be the product of a billion-dollar industry you never knew existed. We need to stop asking who the president is and start asking who is paying the people who tell the president what to think. The single biggest takeaway: policy isn't born in public debate, it's manufactured in private institutions. If this changed the way you are reading the headlines this week, subscribe. Because what's coming in the next few episodes goes even deeper into the questions nobody else is asking out loud yet. All the research and reports mentioned today are cited in the description below, so you can see the data for yourself. I'll see you in the next one as we keep the world in focus. Thank you very much.